They've stolen people's businesses. They drag their kids into every part of the drug business. They've had people killed.
Do you honestly believe every story they've ever told you?
Do you really think everything you do is to protect your family? Are you really that fucking shut down?
Welcome to the Ozark Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Jamie G. Esquire the Fifth. No, I will not defend you in a court of law. I am here with the co-host, the main man, Magnum Mills. Mills, introduce yourself to these peeps and tell them what we're covering on this episode of the Ozark Podcast.
What's up, peeps? And I'm assuming you're like people and not like the little candies, the peeps. I'm not really a huge fan of those, but I am a huge fan of you. Thank you for checking out the Ozark Podcast. Please remember, if you're watching on YouTube, subscribe to the channel, hit the like button. If you're just listening to the podcast, rate, give us a review. Really appreciate that. Helps us out a lot. If you'd like to give us any feedback, you can send it to OzarkPodcast@gmail.com. On this episode of the Ozark Podcast, we are going to discuss episode 10 of season 4, the third episode of season 4, part 2.
And before we get down on it, please know this is a spoiler podcast, 1000%. Here's the deal. We will be spoiling everything up through the episode we are discussing. We know that all of these episodes dropped all at once, but we're tackling these bad boys one at a time. On this episode, we'll be spoiling all episodes of Ozark up through episode 10 of season 4, but nothing past that. We're trying to remain unspoiled here as we cover these episodes, so we will not be discussing any interviews with the cast and creators until we cover the series finale. Mills, hit us with the deets for episode 10 of season 4 of Ozark.
Thank you, Jamie G. This is episode 10, season 4, called You're the Boss, originally released April 29, 2022. This is directed by Melissa Hickey. This is the first episode of Ozark that she's directed, written by John Shaban. This is the fourth written by credit he has on Ozark. Previous ones were Ace Deuce, BFF, and Boss Fight. The opening credit symbols here we see on the title card are 2 tennis balls, a lantern, the Mexican flag on a flagpole, and a winding staircase. The short plot synopsis is: when Tony and Angela have a disagreement, Marty and Wendy are brought out. Wait, that's my fan fiction. I'm sorry. The short plot synopsis is: Marty travels to the Navarro estate. Ruth asks Frank Jr. for a favor. A new acting sheriff makes waves, and Wendy tries to bring Jim back into the fold.
I got to tell you, man, the first 2 episodes of part 2 have me breaking my neck just like Busta Rhymes. Let's see if that trend continues this episode, or if we finally get a bit of a break. I mean, look, I'm sure Marty Byrde trying to run the cartel will be totally chill and relaxing, or will it? Let's find out right here, right now on the Ozark Podcast.
And man, the episode starts out in a relaxing enough way, but you can tell you're going to get hit with the sads right off the bat, because we open with Ben at the restaurant we last saw him at in the episode Fire Pink back in season 3. Now we get to see what happened after Ben saw Nelson arrive, and Ben goes on the final ride of his life. He's initially angry, but he seems to slide into acceptance fairly quickly. He tells Nelson that he's sorry that he has to do this, and asks if he can do something for him. Tell Wendy that he's sorry. He explains that when they were growing up, Wendy was the only one who really loved him, including God. He just wanted Wendy to be proud of him, but he kept fucking up. He asked Nelson if he thinks that Wendy would be proud of him now for the way that he's handling this. Ben thinks that she would be. Nelson never answers, but Ben seems convinced that Nelson will relay the message. They drive to a barn and walk inside. Ben gets on his knees and asks Nelson to wait, saying, "This is a dream." Nelson pulls the trigger, and we cut to the title card.
Bro, I mean, all the sads here, just, and just kind of this like slow country song playing in the background. And this really just highlighted kind of Wendy and what a piece of work she really is. I mean, here you got Ben literally knowing he is on his way to meet his death. And the only thing he's thinking of is that he hopes Wendy's proud of him for how he's handling this death. I mean, like, wow, dude, this was a really, really, really tense scene. I kind of forgot about Ben's eyes and like energy that he creates when he's on screen. That this was this was pretty moving and powerful, and definitely kind of sad, dude. You feel bad for Ben a little bit here.
Yeah, and you kind of wonder too. I guess there must be some good parts about Wendy we don't see, that he is so convinced that she really loves him, like the only one, not even God, just Wendy. You kind of wonder, I mean, maybe we see something else, another childhood flashback at some point to kind of more establish about maybe some of the good things that Wendy did, because we don't seem to be getting a lot of positive information about Wendy Bird these days. And just shout out to, obviously this was probably shot a couple of years after Ben last appeared, and it looked perfect. It all fit. Like you said, an actor, the character just kind of have a crazy kind of energy that they have, something different than any other character on Ozark. And I had forgot just about that. And again, Ben is that dude, man. He'll break your heart. And he's got the one line here when he's talking to Nelson, he's talking about Wendy, and I always wanted her to be proud of me. I just fuck up too much. And, I fuck whatever up. And then I apologize and then fuck up again. He's not wrong, right? I mean, at least he's self-aware here. Like, he kind of knows that he's a fuck up, and you feel bad because he does have, legitimate mental conditions and everything, but still it's just the whole thing is just incredibly sad.
It is, Magnum Mills, and I kind of like what they did here, because when we first got introduced to Ben, we kind of saw that Wendy had been burned out on Ben's bipolar and manic and mental health related issues, and not taking his medicine and things like that. We didn't really get to see Ben being real with himself, and it was just so Ozark that when this guy is literally on his way to die, you get a glimpse of kind of how he views himself and him being real with himself. And I just thought it was really, and then when he's talking about when we was growing up, she was the only thing on the whole planet that really loved me, and I'm including God in that equation. That does two things for me. One, that lets me know that this whole Nathan, the dad thing, he wasn't the dad he's painting himself out to be. Ben never even thought he fucking loved him. That's number one. Number two, Wendy was a good big sister, bro. And I think just, when we first got introduced to Ben, she was so wrapped up in all this shit, and also so burned out from Ben kind of doing the same cycle over and over and over again. We never really got to see that big sister that loved Ben so much. And so I thought this was cool how they did this just with pure self-dialogue with Ben. And, shout out to Nelson, because dude never even answered anything, but somehow had a full conversation with Ben. And I just got to say, do you think, what's the over under here, Magnum Mills? What would you go with? Did Nelson ever tell Wendy any of this, especially about Ben forgiving her, and or that he thought she would be proud of him for how he handled this and he accepted it?
Please, the court, two-part answer, Your Honor. No, he hasn't told her, but I think at some point this season he's going to, and he's going to do it at a time where it fucking breaks Wendy. For
Love
some
it,
reason,
Magnum
he'll
Mills.
just need to get a shot in or something like that, or he tells Marty, somehow it'll get around to her, whether it's Nelson telling Marty, that Marty tells her, or so he has not yet, but eventually it's gonna come out.
Love it. From there, Magnum Mills, we see Marty in the SUV and hear a voiceover from Navarro. We hear him telling Marty that Nelson will protect him and the priest will give him legitimacy, but the rest is up to him. Once word spreads, his lieutenants will gather, and Marty has to win them over. He has to make sure that they trust him and fear him. They have to think that he is more than a messenger. Not only does he have to keep his eyes and ears open, he has to be ruthless. He has to be Omar. And if he shows even an ounce of weakness, they will pounce. If they don't respect him, they will join forces with a rival, and they will kill him. Marty has now arrived at Omar's place in Mexico, and he calls Wendy. So far, so good, but Marty has got to go to a meeting. Wendy thanks him for doing this, and Marty hangs up. Wendy goes to Charlotte's room immediately after this phone call and tells her that Marty is okay, but Charlotte just gives her a disgusted look and continues reading her book. Magnum Mills, how cool is it to see a teenager in the year 2022 reading a book? Holy shit, she wasn't even on her phone or iPad. I mean, that was pretty cool, right?
Yeah, and I mean, it might just be a collection of Marvel comics or whatever. Yeah, no, it's Charlotte. This is Charlotte's not really doing some light reading, you would say. She's reading Ill Fares the Land by Tony Jute. This is some serious shit. It's just the basic summary Tony Juke called America an eviscerated society, a nation tethered to its government more by tradition and law than collective benefit and unity. Written in the wake of the 2008 financial crisis, Ill Fares the Land takes on nihilistic individualism of conservatives and the failure of liberals to defend effective government. It reintroduces forgotten alternatives to address our common needs and asks the central question facing us today: how can we make a good society now?
Pretty heavy reading, my dude.
And it seems to tie into the show again, like about good society and everything like that. Again, kind of talking about the morals of these people. And obviously they're pointing out that Charlotte right now probably doesn't really feel very comfortable with where her moral compass is pointed.
Not at all. And I have a feeling after the whole Wyatt thing and it's a little shit with this show. I mean, that's just, it's such a tiny thing that probably the bulk majority of the viewers didn't even catch. But think about how profound that book is. She's on the heels of just having to kind of rat out her own parents to do what she thought was right and tell Ruth what was going on because she cared about Wyatt and Wyatt was murdered. Really, really cool. Back to the scene though, dude. I was a big fan of how they did this Omar voiceover. I really liked it created the perfect kind of setup, the perfect kind of build and suspense build, and it lays it out like this is for real with Marty Byrde. Like if he doesn't execute this to a T, exactly how Omar said, he's set, bro. He's done. He's not coming back from Mexico. I thought it was brilliantly done here. I really liked it.
Yeah, again, this is effective storytelling, especially because these episodes are all having a runtime of a little bit over an hour now. So this is economic here. Instead of having like 3 separate scenes, you'd have like the Omar meeting, you'd have Marty in the car, and then Marty when he arrives, you kind of jam them all into one with the voiceover. And I think it's a great line by Omar when he kind of addresses like, if Marty's going to survive and do this, Omar says, "You have to be me." And I'm kind of a sucker for these kind of, plots, whether it's somebody impersonating someone or someone like being a temporary, like, the interim coach has to step up and give a big speech or something like that. Cause Lou Brown had to go to the hospital with a heart attack or whatever. I may or may not be directly referencing Major League 2. Yeah, dude, I thought that was effective storytelling. It did a good job to, all right, here's where Marty is. He's in Mexico. Here's how he got there. Here's what he has to do. Here's all the information we need. Bada bing, bada boom, lays it all out. Nice and efficiently. Big fan of that.
And big shout out to Bada Bing's, right? I mean, that was one of the most premier gentleman clubs in all of New Jersey, owned by none other than Silvio. Sopranos, we love you forever. Maybe one day, if we have time, we'll rewatch Sopranos and do a podcast on it. We will see. But for now, it's all about the Ozark podcast. Magnum Mills, where do we go from there? Are we back in Mexico?
After that, we're back in Mexico, and it's time for Marty to meet with Omar's lieutenants. Marty talks, and a woman translates his words into Spanish. Marty says that he's there on behalf of Omar, who he saw yesterday. He informs them that Javi is dead and that Omar ordered the killing. He explains that Javi was a traitor who was making a deal with the U.S. government and that he was the one who got Omar arrested. When Marty is asked who will run things, Marty says Navarro, who Marty can get out of jail. They ask Marty, why is he so confident that they can free Omar? And Marty says it's because he wants to. He wanted Navarro to win the cartel war, and he did. He wants Navarro to get out of prison, so he will. He tells the lieutenants that he will need to meet with each of them individually regarding their respective territories. They will need to bring with them their accountants and their books. Marty leaves the meeting, but he is followed by Camilla Elizondo, Javi's mother. Marty tells her that he's sorry for her loss, and she has to have a word with him. Marty again apologizes and says that he can't tell her much, just that it was over quick. Camilla seems to take this well, saying that she did all of her crying the night that Javi disappeared. She asks Marty if he has any kids, and he tells her that he has a son and a daughter. She wants to know if Marty can really get her brother Omar out of jail. Marty says yes, and explains the process of getting him off the SDN list and getting him extradited to Mexico. Camilla tells Marty that he sounds very confident, and Marty replies that he is.
Magnum Mills, I gotta say, bro, and I'm curious to get your take on this a little bit. So one of the things that people kind of doubted going into the show is how would Jason Bateman take on such a serious, dark role? And I'm still not 100% confident with him being like a tough guy. It's just not who he is. But I did kind of like his delivery here, and it's not necessarily from what he said. It's how he said it, and it's what he did with his eyes and his look. That to me was what made this impactful to where you might believe him. It didn't even really matter that it's like, well, it's what I want, and I did this. He's never going to be that dude who can be like, scare the shit out of you and fucking take off his shirt and he's got a giant tattoo on his chest and he's like a scary mofo. Like, no. But I liked how he delivered this facially. Like the way, the look in his eyes, the stern delivery, without hesitation, with conviction. I got there. Now, there's been times where it's been kind of like, I don't know if Jason Bateman can really pull this off, and maybe they're trying to push too hard. He's kind of better at that kind of being, analytical and thinking, and not, you don't really want to put him in a scene where he has to be the tough guy, but it worked here. But for me, it was because of the delivery, the conviction, and what he did kind of with his eyes and his stern look. And any thoughts on that, Magnum Mills, for you?
I think it's about right here. Again, you kind of, it's hard to separate because this is Jason Bateman acting as Marty Byrde, who's trying to act tough. So again, you're doing a little bit of the Tropic Thunder thing. There's multiple levels to peel here. I think he's doing a good enough job. And I think as an actor, he might be able to pull off you'd be surprised sometimes. Some of these, he's known as a more comedic guy, but they can have some good dramatic turns. I feel like he played a good, like, psycho killer in something or whatever. I feel like he really could turn it on if he wanted to as an actor, but that wouldn't fit what Marty Byrde can do. So yeah. I think it would be, from what we've seen so far to this series, it would make no sense if Marty Byrde could all of a sudden turn around and like give a full out Tony Montana-esque performance or something like that. I wouldn't buy it. Really, at the end of the day, I think for logistic purposes, Marty had to be the one to go here. But in reality, Wendy Byrde would be much better suited to this type of work than Marty. But I think what Marty's going to do is he's going to do his Marty thing here. And that's why he's like, he doesn't want to talk to the guys as much. He's like, no, I want to talk to your accountants and bring the books, because that's what he knows. Yep. And you never even heard Omar tell him to do that. So I'm assuming, at this point, Marty's just freestyling this. Like, all right, what can he do? And that's his easiest way to maybe figure out who did it is, all right, step one, figure out who might have a reason to kill him, who's stealing money. So I think that's pretty sound, detective work by Marty there, and also him sticking to his strengths.
Absolutely. And the other thing too is, two things happen here, Magnum Mills, that I think kind of plant seeds for future. And Ozark's so good at doing that. We'll talk about how that opening scene is, as hard as that was with Ben, it planted a seed for something that's going to come later in this episode and beyond. This scene plants a couple seeds for me too. Number one, you pointed it out with him checking on the books. Well, I also think he's doing that to kind of gain some intel and really important information for the FBI, and even mentions that later on the phone in this episode to Wendy, that he's gathering a lot of important information about the operation. Really, really key. So I think that's the other thing. And if he can create some value with Navarro by saying, I'm finding out what's going on here with your books, again, it's a win-win for everyone involved. Number two, we see Javi's mother, and we talked about this in that first episode with her potentially being more involved and being a player. We got that kind of introduction to her when she was on the phone with Javi. She's here. She's very nice and very content for just losing her son. There's got to be something else going on here, but I think there's going to be a lot more to come with her as this season and ultimately series plays out. How do you feel about that, Magnum Mills?
Short answer is we're going to talk about this a little bit later on the episode, so I won't ruminate on it too long here. But yeah, I think that she's rope-a-dope with Marty here. I think she's ultimately the one who ordered the code red, so to speak. I think she is manipulating Marty right from Jump Street here. So that's my call. We'll have more space to talk about that in a later scene. So anything else here to wrap up this one?
No, Magnum Mills, good scene, but I think we covered it. Let's move on. It's that time of the episode where Wendy confronts somebody in the driveway. It's Wendy in the driveway time. She pulls up to the Langmore place, and Ruth comes out of her trailer to meet her. Wendy tells Ruth that she's just here to help her, but Ruth isn't interested in her advice. Wendy asks Ruth to partner with the Byrdes just one time. After that, Wendy will take care of Shaw. Wendy wants Ruth to make Shaw's donations to the foundation a requirement of the deal. Wendy says that she owes them, and it would cost her nothing to help them. Ruth replies that it would cost her nothing to fuck them either. And she just goes back inside with that quintessential angry Ruth walk. How cool is that angry Ruth walk? I wish I could do that. She gets a whole thing going. Very cool.
She hates Wendy Byrde like I hate somebody taking my reserved parking space. Like if I put the cone there, don't be an asshole and move the cone.
Yeah, who moves a cone?
That's the kind of energy that Ruth gives off 24/7, especially to Wendy Byrde. And I think this just again continues the trend of them having their face-offs, especially in driveways. I don't know if this is like a running gag. We're really going to get a driveway confrontation every episode. Yeah, again, just enjoy it. Great. Because Ruth, at this point, you have to know, right? Like, there's no way she's helping Wendy. If Wendy was out of the picture, maybe there's a small chance she would help Marty. There is 0% fucking chance she's going to do anything that could even benefit Wendy Bird in the slightest infinitesimal percentage of anything. Like, no.
And honestly, I think Wendy really slipped up here. It shows how desperate Wendy is to regain her foundation and that money coming in. But what she did is she tipped off Ruth on how Ruth could screw the Birds over. And so, I think this is just, again, a little bit of a seed plant, and we'll talk about it later when Ruth decides to seek out help for something she's trying to do to make this deal happen with Catherine Shaw, because she knows that the Birds are fucking with her. And so I think we're going to see kind of a back and forth of who can kind of beat who here between Ruth and the Birds. I mean, that fight is not over. I mean, that battle, it may be kind of the Cold War right now, but something's brewing between the Birds and Ruth Langmore. You just got to believe it. And I think it's going to be, death of 1,000 cuts here, so to speak, with just little shots fired until we get closer to the end here. I mean, I think that's still a major, major, major storyline. And I don't know if both, Wendy and Ruth can kind of live through this. I don't know, but we'll talk about that later on. But I just wanted to point that out, that I again, it's an opportunity now that Ruth has the hand here a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, it's starting to feel more like the end game of the show is going to kind of be Wendy versus Ruth, and whatever side Marty picks is going to be the one that kind of wins, but it'll be a little bit of a Pyrrhic victory. And I just want to point out here that something from this, and then from the beginning of the last episode when they're sitting in that hotel room talking, remember how Marty references, like, they basically destroyed Ruth's life. Like, ever since they came into her life has been decimated. And yet Wendy thinks that Ruth owes them. Like, look at how diametrically opposed they are. Like, they're on the other sides of the planet vis-a-vis Ruth. They are literally on opposite poles here. So that's going to be a tough position to reconcile.
Good call on that, Magnum Mills. They absolutely are. And that's just one of many examples in that marriage. Not the most functional marriage on the planet. From there, Wendy leaves and heads over to the police station. We find out that Sheriff Guerrero went back to Polk County full-time, and Deputy Wyckoff is now the acting sheriff. Wendy senses that this deputy might be more amenable to her persuasions than Sheriff Guerrero was, and she hints that she might be able to help him get elected as the full-time sheriff. All he has to do is take a chance and stop a crime before it happens.
Shout out, we'll hear him lovingly referred to as fucking Ronnie by Ruth later in the episodes. I want to keep calling him Ronnie here. I like how he didn't beat around the bush when Wendy's trying to be like, what's the deal with this guy? And he's like, to be honest, right now, I'm more interested in what you're saying and what you're not saying in between the words. It's like he doesn't know the word implied, but he knows what he knows what the definition of implied is. And he just wants, Wendy to just tell me what you want here. Don't make it too complicated.
I'm actually excited about Deputy Wyckoff, and it's not because I thought Sheriff Guerrero was I actually thought Sheriff Guerrero was like a good functional police officer character.
Easily the best they've had in there so far.
100%. But you got to think Deputy Wyckoff is going to be more willing to kind of be more fun for the show and maybe take some handouts, maybe take a little bit of this under the table. You just got to think that maybe that's now a chess piece that people will try to manipulate, and that's pretty cool. And I just personally, I love how his accent's hilarious to me. I just, I'm a fan of Deputy Wyckoff. I'm excited about him going forward.
And to bring another reference around from the, episode 8 here, when they had that Ruth has a big speech up there in Shaw Medical, and she calls Wendy a predator that doesn't even know why it's killing anymore. When she sees that it's this bullet here and not Sheriff Guerrero, you can see just her eyes light up, and she's like a predator looking at dinner. Like, she's just like, oh, I'm gonna eat this dude.
Oh, she just sat down.
And Ruth knows immediately when she figures it out.
Knife.
It takes her about 2 seconds to figure out Wendy Bird just ran this dude right the fuck over. So
yep.
Yeah, again, a nice little fun scene, and again, Wendy just showing, this is what she's very good at.
This is Wendy in all her glory, Magnum Mills. After the meeting with Wendy, acting Sheriff Wyckoff heads over to Lazy O Motel and talks to our boy Sam Dermody. That's right, he makes an appearance. He asks Sam what he knows about Ruth's business and Darlene Snell. Sam doesn't know anything, but tells Wyckoff that he can talk to the bookkeeper. He's in room 138. You gotta love Sam here. He even said it. He had some female conflicts of interest, because Sheriff Wyckoff said, didn't she used to work over at Lickety Splits, which is a great name for a strip club. I mean, can I just give the writers some credit?
It'd be better if it was a strip club / bowling alley, but it's still good.
It's still amazing. Actually, strip club / bowling alley is like the next big thing, dude. God, we should, you know what? I'm going to work on a business plan for that. But this is the Ozark podcast, and I will stick to the script here. So I just thought that was so funny. And Sam's response was, I had some female conflicts of interest. So Ruth thought it would be a better fit here. I mean, he's just so foolishly, joyfully dumb. I don't know, man. Sam Dermody always makes me smile.
Pretty much. And you had to know that, the bookkeeper's obviously going to be Jonah. Would have been a nice little shout out to P. Diddy and Bad Boy back in the day if he'd been staying in room 112, but I'm all right with 138. I don't think there's any particular meaning in that. After that, we see acting Sheriff Wyckoff head out to said room 138, which is where Jonah is staying. Jonah answers the knock at his door, and Wyckoff is surprised that Ruth's bookkeeper is the bird's son. Jonah says that he just helps out. He and Ruth are friends, and he likes math. His mom knows all about this. Wyckoff starts by asking exactly what he does for Ruth before asking if he's done any bookkeeping for Darlene Stell. Jonah seems a little bit flustered, and the acting sheriff puts on the full court press. Before Jonah can say anything else, Nathan comes around the corner and shuts down the makeshift interrogation, saying that he and Jonah were just about to leave for lunch.
I like how Jonah handled himself here. I mean, he was kind of a cool customer a little bit. He didn't really show his hand. I mean, he kind of, he was starting to slip a little bit, and that's when kind of Nathan approaches. And I don't know, man, Nathan just gives me the goddamn creeps. I think this guy is just totally self-fulfilling in his actions, and this gives him a leg up on Wendy. And I think that's why he came to Jonah. He just strikes me as so incredibly fake. And I'm not a big Nathan fan. I'm just going to be honest with you guys. I don't really shout out to the actor. He does a really good job, but he's an absolute dick. I think he's like a creepy, hidden abusive kind of person. And I'm not a big fan of that.
I will say, from the way he treats the cop, even though it's his grandkid, you get the feeling like he's probably not a dude who has there's no love lost for cops from Run Ronnie.
This isn't his first rodeo.
You're right. Yeah, Nathan is not a fan of Run Ronnie Run there, but give Deputy Wyckoff some credit there. He's the first one to come out that it's kind of fucking suspect to have a 15-year-old kid doing the financials for your business. I know they want all you kids to get a job and bootstraps and everything, but usually the 15-year-old, unless it's some kind of Doogie Howser situation, is not going to be doing the financials for a viable company. And of all people to point it out, I guess, hey, look at the cop that's coming over to law enforcement here.
Sheriff Wyckoff doing his job, bro. He's not he aims to be a sheriff permanent. Speaking
of that, do you think that, because kind of Wendy set him up on the Ruth thing, do you think that Wendy sent him to the motel?
That's really interesting. I don't
know when
think
I first
so.
Watched it.
I don't think so in this one, but we've seen Wendy, risk Jonah before.
Well, that's what I mean, right? Because if she sent him to the motel, she would have done so knowing that it was going to come back around to Jonah, but she also knows that Jonah gave Ruth information about, Javi and everything. I don't know. Would you put it past Wendy Burke at this point to deliberately sick this dude on her son, especially if she doesn't think of any long-term consequences?
I wouldn't at all, but just based on her reaction when Nathan brings her this news, I don't think she did later in the episode when Nathan tells her that, she was kind of surprised by it. I don't think she did. And I think the biggest reason why is because she doesn't want Nathan in her business.
Yep,
but just a hunch. We don't know either way. From there, Magnum Mills, we are back south of the border in Mexico. Shout out Cinco de Mayo. We just had that. Marty is meeting individually with the lieutenants and their accountants. In the first meeting, we see Marty advises the lieutenant how to increase revenue by improving their shipping efficiency. And the lieutenant seems, pleased. Marty takes a call from Wendy, and we gain a bit of insight. Marty is doing all of these meetings to gather as much information as possible in hopes that it might be valuable to the FBI. He asks Wendy how things are going with the Shaw deal. Wendy says that Ruth turned her down. She's going to try to stop her. Get this, with the new sheriff. She's on her way over to Jim's, and she thinks that if anybody can get the foundation back on its feet, it's the fixer, Jim.
I mean, pretty straightforward here. This is just kind of moving the plot along. I do think that this shows Marty and Wendy would be a pretty good team running the cartel, because Marty could do shit like this. He could help them improve their profit margins and lower shrinkage and all of those good things. Watch your overhead. When Wendy could deal with kind of the ill shit in the Machiavellian machinations and all that emotional fucking juju that she does. So emotional jujitsu maybe, but she might have a little bit of the voodoo juju going on there too. I don't know, man. I'm deathly afraid of Wendy Bird at this point.
Oh, definitely afraid of her. But I'll tell you what, dude, I would love to create a company and hire Marty as my CFO. Like, the dude is really good pouring over financials and being able to kind of pick out instantly. I mean, he looks at financials.
That's a 1-letter jump there, but it's a big one from that E to that F for Marty to put him in his comfort zone.
CF for sure. And I mean, just instantly he finds like a major shortfall with their logistics. I don't know if he was looking at the receivables or what he was looking at, but I thought it was really cool that he just points it out. Like, as he's answering the phone, he just really quickly gives them, like, drops a damn gem on them that blows their mind in terms of how they can increase revenue, and then picks up the phone. This is him at his best. And you know, I like when they do this, when they back up with how like smart and good he is with shit, with examples like this. I thought it was pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, as you know, Sonny once said to Tom Hagen, like, you're no wartime consigliere, and Marty isn't. That's Wendy. But I do like that they are highlighting, you see it in this episode, both his strengths and his weaknesses, kind of. So I think they did a good job of that.
100% Magnum Mills. Take us to the next scene, brother.
Oh, and it's time to see Jamie's G's guy, the bull Jim, and Wendy arrive at Jim Rattledorf's house. He lets her in after she has to, knock at the door for a minute because he's not really happy to see her. And he comments that she didn't get his message that he sent by not answering her calls. They sit down and Jim makes it very clear that he does not want to work with the Birds any longer. However, Wendy keeps at it and she explains their plan. The board of directors can pressure the Treasury Department to get Omar removed from the SDN list. Jim says that he knows that the Shaw deal is in trouble, and without that, they'll lose the board. Wendy says that she's working on it, but in the meantime, she needs Jim to rustle up some new donors at a fundraiser at the casino. He'll make some calls, but he's not back in the fold until he sees real progress. Wendy says that he will, if he helps her.
I enjoyed this scene because both of these two characters are so smart and cunning and good in the moment. I mean, Wendy went there without a damn leg to stand on. She somehow gets herself inside, and at the end, she has him snickering and willing to kind of dip a big toe. You know, he's going to hang a fang here and just get back in just inch by inch. Now, one thing that I think that I will be wrong on a prediction was, and I was just listening through, if you guys listen to our Ozark predictions before this final set of episodes dropped here in season 4, I had in my notes that Jim and Wendy were going to bang, that there was some strange sexual chemistry here. And it was like, not that Wendy's got a bunch of time to be out, just taking dick and whatnot, but I thought she would bang here. And we realized that Jim's actually in a marriage he has a husband, and it's like, oh shit, well that's probably not going to happen at all. So I
Wendy
think
Bird's pretty persuasive. I'm just saying,
if anyone could do it, it would be Wendy. But it sounds like Jim is in a committed relationship, and you got to hand it to him. He just tells her, so I watched a psychotic drug lord beat the shit out of your husband in my living room. I mean, just classic Jim here, dude. Really enjoy Jim's character.
Oh yeah, and then Wendy, in her Wendy logic, so like he says that, and so Wendy's like, oh well, he must be scared of Javi, and then she's like, oh don't worry, Omar had Javi killed. Like that's gonna make it all better now. Don't worry, the other guy is back, and he had him killed, so it's all good now, baby. It's all good. It's all good.
The first guy that created all the scare and worry and fear, he's back. Don't worry.
Yeah, no, Jim's even like, I could have been killed, and Wendy's like, but you weren't. Let's be honest, dude. He does have, whether or not it's a sexual thing, he does have a thing for Wendy. And I think that's why he ghosted her, because he knew if he talked to her, if he answered the text, whatever, she was going to suck him
right back in.
So I think that's why he went with the ghost mode instead of, like, as soon as he opened that door, the decision was already made, basically. It was all over, but the screaming.
Yeah, and you know what's funny is I don't think he wanted to open the door. Shout out to the actor here. I thought this was cool how they did this. He peeks through the blinds, and just because Wendy's so inquisitive, she catches it right away. And she's like, and he's like, fuck, and then he's like, damn it, now I have to open the door because she saw me, right? So I think given the surprise sneak attack visit like that paid dividends for Wendy Bird, and he couldn't resist that Wendy charm, man. Once you get inside the birdhouse, you can stay, but you can never leave.
It is like the Hotel California and that, and I feel bad because I think there's a little reciprocation here. Jim obviously is feeling her in that way. And I think Wendy, like when she gets Jim killed, she'll be sad for like, I don't know, maybe like 10, 20 seconds or something like that. Like
she'll feel it for a split second.
Yeah, for almost 30 seconds, she will feel something. Like
there might even be one tear. There might even be a tear, but it'll go away quickly. But yeah, she will feel something.
It depends if she remembered to bring the onion in her pocket with her to make sure that she just had the onion handy.
Shout out Dennis Reynolds carrying the onion around, the implication. Now,
remember feelings?
Yeah, remember feelings? You have them. Oh man, I have to take a minute and plug. We do this incredible fucking podcast called The Night Pod Cometh. It's all things Always Sunny in Philadelphia. If you want to break from this heavy, crazy shit of Ozark, go check out The Night Pod Cometh. It's a good time. We're currently doing season 11, one of our favorite seasons, but we always will be doing something on The Night Pod Cometh. Now, back to the Ozark podcast. Next, Magnum Mills, we see Mel meeting with the police officer that pulled over Wendy and Ben back in season 3's Fire Pink. The officer remarks that Wendy was aggressive and real buttoned up. She also mentions that Ben had said that a drug cartel was trying to kill him. Mel asks her for help in using security cameras to trace where Wendy and Ben went. She says that she can get a few for him up to the border. And Mills, I got to tell you, bro, not only is Mel got this kick-ass hair and chews gum like a goddamn champ, he's pretty good at detective work, dude. Like, the dude actually is pretty good at his job, and I think it's going to be a bigger problem for the Birds that they have no idea what's coming here. Like, I think this is going to be a major issue, and Mel's going to get himself into a whole world of shit that he doesn't really want to get into, but he's like P. Diddy and Bad Boy. This is 2 Bad Boy shout outs in this episode, but thought I told you that we won't stop, can't stop, won't stop, bro. Put him in a shiny, puffy coat even. I mean, this dude will not stop. Shout out Mel.
Yeah, I think this further solidifies the idea that back in the day, he was probably that cop that was right on the edge. Everyone knew, like, he drank too much. He probably had some extracurricular activities going on, but he was so good at his job that everyone let him get away with it up to the point he gets caught basically, doing blow in the evidence room. Up until then, he was very good at his job, which is why he made it as far as he did. Nathan even talked about checking out his references. Maybe he really did. Everyone was like, oh yeah, fantastic cop. Just couldn't control himself on the, when he was skiing or whatever. And I think this scene just reinforces that yeah, you should be a little bit, take him seriously at least. Like, he's going to get to the bottom of this, right? You definitely feel like Mel he's almost all the way there already.
Yeah, he's formidable, bro. He's a formidable thing. One thing I will say that's cool about this, and then we'll move on to the next scene here, is, again, that cold open. Not only was that so emotional and just important to see what ended up happening with Ben and ultimately Ben's murder, but it starts off at that restaurant. Now, this detective work by Mel is going to eventually lead him to that restaurant. So again, it kind of comes full circle, and this is kind of that halfway point of getting us there. This show is just so good at doing that, putting something it's almost Breaking Bad, Better Call Saul-ish, with the cold opening coming back to life somewhere in the episode. Really freaking cool. I loved how they did that here. Mills, walk us through the next scene, bro.
After that, we catch back up with Ruth, and she's about to drive a U-Haul truck off to somewhere. And as she takes off, she notices a suspicious car. Later, when she arrives at Claire's, she notices the same car. She elects to pull a U-turn and heads off. She arrives at the sheriff's office, where she lays into Deputy Ronnie for following her. She accuses him of being in Wendy Bird's pocket, but Ronnie says that he was just looking out for her. He asks if she's taking over Darlene's business, and Ruth says no. Ronnie makes it clear that he aims to be the permanent sheriff, and he doesn't want anybody fucking that up. Ruth just needs to go home and not screw up. He yells at her to get out, and Ruth storms out of his office.
Once an episode, if we're lucky, hopefully twice, you get Ruth Langmore as straight up Ruth Langmore, and she ain't playing around, dude. She comes in here, guns a-blazing. She just pulls out her veiny hog and slaps it across this guy's face right away. Ronnie, what the fuck? I mean, she just comes right in, dude. She has no bones to like, she's not like respectful to a police officer at all here. I mean, this is just classic Ruth Langmore. Big fan of it.
You get the feeling they probably like went to school together or something like that back in the day. They seem to be probably about similarly aged, so that all makes sense. And you get a Ruth line here that's probably going to end up on the eventual, top.
Oh, it's
Ruth.
going to. Yeah.
So, when she walks into it, like after he figured, she kind of, Ronnie says what happened with Wendy, and Ruth goes, what I'm telling you is Wendy's playing chess and you're playing fucking Candyland.
Yeah. I mean, this is classic Ruth. That we'll probably talk about that when we give out some hardware later in this episode, but
one.
It's a great one. And it's kind of cool because Ronnie basically makes his point and tells her, go home, cool off, don't screw up, it ain't that hard, Langmore. And then when she leaves, he's like, fuck, takes a deep breath, sits down, he's like, bitch. She's so hard to deal with, dude. She's a problem for real.
Oh, absolutely. But I also think this goes back to a little bit of a shout out to that early season stuff where like the Langmores were kind of pariahs, and you haven't, maybe because there's so few of them left now. Remember, that was a real thing back in season 1 or whatever. Like, nobody respected the Langmores and everything, and we haven't really dealt with that in a while. So you kind of see that's what Ronnie drives home here when he's like, it ain't that hard, Langmore. Just to imply to her like that makes her lesser somehow for being a Langmore. So I think it's just one more thing that's going to be bothering Ruth here. So yeah, I don't think that this is the end of Ronnie being on the wrong end of Ruth Langmore's wrath.
Not at all.
Not a balls on him though. I'll give him that, dude. He's willing to go toe to toe with her.
He is, and I got to tell you, like he is after. And this again, Wendy's so good at identifying what somebody wants. And if they're going to border on that moral compass of doing whatever it takes to get what they want, and Wendy knows how to manipulate that, he is. But I also think he might be a decent cop here too. He's at least trying to figure shit out and stop it and earn his keep here. As he intends to be sheriff permanent, bro, and ain't nothing going to get in the way of that.
Apparently not. And that pretty much wraps up that scene. And then from there, Ruth heads out to see our boy Frank Cosgrove Jr. She walks into his office and he asks her if he owes her a drink, referencing the first episode 8 here, the first episode of season 4, part 2. He has his guys leave and he then pours each of them a drink. Ruth asks him to give her a hand with something, for a price, of course. Ruth explains the situation with Darlene's heroine, the sheriff, and the birds. He agrees to give her a hand, but he laughs, saying that he never saw her as a Darlene Snell wannabe. He saw her more as a junior Marty Bird. Ruth says, fuck no, I ain't either of them, and finishes her drink.
I gotta say, as a guy who likes a little bit of nip in a good drinking glass, Frank Jr.'s glasses are kick-ass here, dude. And he pours just a finger's worth there. And one thing I love about what she does is after she makes that point, she takes that sip and she lets it sit in her mouth for a minute before she swallows it. I mean, this chick is she's Ruth, I love you. That's all I'm going to say. That's all I'm going to say, Magnum Mills. That's how you that's how you take a shooter of freaking bourbon or whatever it was, bro. She let that shit sit before she swallowed.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's probably a Langmore thing, right? They start working on your ability to do that when you're 4 or 5 years old or something. So by the time you're as old as Ruth are, you're very good at, drinking.
She is a professional. And we, shout out to the Ozark podcast, your boy Jamie G, Esquire the Fifth, and Magnum Mills. We talked about on our prediction episode right here on the Ozark podcast that maybe we would see a Frank Jr. and Ruth combo platter and them come together and start to work together. And this is twice now that they've been on camera together, tied into the storyline. Magnum Mills is doing a proverbial bang with a finger going through a hole, but I don't think Frank Jr., it might just be a finger. Frank Jr. is going to have to be a cunnilingus expert because I don't know. He's got that thing shot off. Now,
He is a cunning linguist.
He's a cunning linguist. But I do like the energy between them two. And I like that Frank just got right to it. And then he's like, yeah, you want me to help fuck back? And he's in, but he does call out that he never had her as a Darlene Snell wannabe and he had her as a junior Marty Bird type. I like these two together. I hope we get more of it. And I think we're going to, Magnum Mills. I think you and I were right, brother, on our predictions. These two, I think they're going to be doing more and more together. And just maybe there'll be some sort of spinoff in the universe. We're not going to talk about those type of predictions today, though.
I think you pointed this out before. It's a good point that Ruth does not have many people left that she can trust. It also Frank Jr. pretty high on the list. Also worth noting here that he does bring up the gun he gave her and asks if she got rid of it like he told her to. She says, oh yeah, she got rid of it. But when he told her to get rid of it, I don't think he meant throw it in the fucking lake next to your house, like just from the shore either. Not like she didn't take it in a boat and go out in the middle of the lake or something. That wouldn't have been the best, but that would have been better. I love Ruth Langmore, but she does not have like a Garrett Cole type of arm there. Like, I do not think that gun made it very far offshore there. So
I mean,
I feel like that's going to come back around for some reason.
Magnum Mills, she's no Josh Allen. Shout out to the Buffalo Bills, number 17, but she doesn't have the rifle to throw that thing through. She should, the thing that just pisses me off is she literally drove through like one or two fucking states from Chicago on the way back. You couldn't have done something with that. Just basically that thing washed back up. That's sitting on the shoreline in front of her house right now. I mean, just a bad move there.
It makes it look especially bad because that's where OJ got rid of the knife too, right? So there's obviously places to get rid of weapons around Chicago where they'll never be found. I guess it just doesn't speak well for Ruth's future NFL career. I think she's more of a dome quarterback. Unfortunately, she might have to stick to one of the indoor leagues. Maybe she get in that 7-on-7 league or whatever, the audience controlled football or whatever Terrell Owens is playing at age 62 now.
100%, but goddamn, she would be good in the locker room.
Yeah,
Magnum Mills,
she would be a leader of men. She would be a leader of men.
She would be a leader.
She'd be just this little spicy, you know what I mean? She's so much shorter. Like, you're going for the halftime speech, you're trying to figure out who's talking, and then you have to like cut down because Ruth only comes up to like the dude's like nipples, basically.
Yeah, but she would give a killer.
Her shoulder pads are like twice as big as she is. But yes, I'm there for that. That if that's be a weird spinoff, but sure.
Yes, we love you, Ruthie. Back in Mexico, Magnum Mills. Let's get back on track here, baby. We're back in Mexico. Marty is meeting with a different lieutenant this time, Arturo. This time, he finds cash flow discrepancies that indicate someone is stealing from the cartel. Dude, I mean, they did a pretty obvious job here as Arturo is just acting super duper defensive. They planted the seed during Marty's first scene with the cartel as he's kind of tapping on the table and being agitated and just not all in on Marty, given the look. They spent a lot of time kind of focusing in on him here. I mean, how obvious was it that he's doing some shady shit, right?
Yeah, that was my initial impression because you kind of see when Marty brings it up, the accountant, again, maybe the dude's a good actor, but he seemed genuinely surprised. And then you hear it's just moving a decimal point. An accountant, you think if he was going to defraud a cartel would be, a little bit smoother than that, not quite so glaringly obvious. So then it did really look like when Arturo starts beating him, my initial thought was, oh yeah, like this dude either did it or told him to do it and does it one way or the other. He doesn't want him to talk. My only surprise was it doesn't look like he actually killed the accountant. I was sure he was just going to kill him, but you kind of hear the dude groaning when Arturo leaves. So I'm assuming he lived.
Yeah, and you wouldn't do it 3 shipments in a row. Again, I think Marty knew there would be something amiss here. Navarro's gone. I mean, Javi, new leadership coming in. It just spells opportunity for people to skim. And yeah, he definitely knew it. And dude, did he throw the glass directly at the dude and it break? Yep. Or did it hit the? I mean, that was pretty graphic. I love how they shot that. There's not a ton to the scene, but I just want to say I love how they shot it. The angle from Marty where you can't see the dude and he's like, no. And the guy's picking up the freaking stool and this was really cool camera work here for me. I enjoyed that. Not that I enjoy watching somebody get beaten up or hurt, but I thought it was really cool how they saw it. Not unless it's a member of the New York Jets or Miami Dolphins or New England Patriots. But anyways, I digress. Go Bills. Thought the scene was pretty cool.
Yeah, the only thing I think is that Marty had a good idea here, but he didn't think it all the way through to what happens if he finds these discrepancies.
Yeah.
Because he could opt to not say anything and just write them down. And then, but if he's going to bring them up to dude face to face, he has to know that can't fly, right? If he's the cartel dude, he has to be Omar, remember? So I don't think he played this quite correctly. I like what he's doing to get the intel, but it doesn't, if you're going to confront the dude, then you better be ready to have the full-on confrontation. You can't just accuse one of these guys of skimming and not be ready to go to war over it, basically, because these dudes, that's what they're used to. If they get caught, it's death, right? So
it's death. I think I'm with you on this. Omar would find out and then call in the lieutenant and act like it's some sort of celebration, special thing for him, and then tell him, and then kill him.
Or he'd tell him right on the spot and slit his throat himself right then and there as soon as he found it out. Maybe not even say anything, just walk over and then do it when he's bleeding out, explain it.
Yeah.
Some hardcore shit. Or like you said, to do it in a way that he wouldn't realize it was coming.
Yep.
Or maybe try to work him to make sure if it was just him or any his underlings are in on it, that kind of thing too.
Yep. So we do see Marty having to get a little bit aggressive here as the episode rolls on. Magnum Mills, take us through the next scene here.
Later that night, we see that Marty can't sleep. And we cut over to Navarro, and he can't sleep either. The next morning, Navarro is outside getting his 1-hour day to exercise. As he's being led back inside, He's jumped and stabbed multiple times by another inmate. Omar manages to strangle the man to death using his handcuffs, but nobody comes to help Omar as he lays on the floor and bleeds out.
Bro, this was not, it wasn't that it was super stunning, but it was like, oh shit, dude, like that dude got probably 4 or 5 quick stabs in his back shoulder. You're gonna bleed out like
he
crazy.
got a couple in between the ribs too. Like there was some organ damage going on. Like
100%.
A pretty, he just somehow missed the organs. Like, yeah, I bet you he got 6-7 good shanks in there, and that looked like to be that was like a 3-4 inch. That was a real weapon. It wasn't just a little, a little half-inch or something like that. So
no, that wasn't
shout
a
out Omar,
man.
I guess
filed down.
That's who Omar was, right? That shows you how he would have treated somebody else. Like, dude is literally, you see the amount of blood he lost, and he still managed to kill this guy. We've seen Omar
with no one
that rage in him, and
absolutely. I love this scene too, because as he's getting, he knows no one's coming to help him. It's either kill or be killed. And I thought it was interesting how the guards, everyone just walks away and lets it happen. So that tells you this was paid off at a high level here. But he manages to kill, and as he kills him, he just kind of lets himself go, and you see the blood just immediately start rushing out on that white floor. Really, really, really like how this was done. I didn't necessarily think he would die here, because the show, we just lost Javi. We kind of have to have him here, but no doubt this throws a major curve in what the Birds are trying to accomplish. They just can't catch a break here, dude.
Well, yeah, I mean, Marty Bird's already riding a unicycle while juggling bowling pins that are on fire, and somebody just threw a chainsaw and all right, keep going, add this to it now. So now he has to run the full bluff, right? He was already bluffing a little bit about how often he was in contact with Omar and stuff. Now he has to literally be Omar, because he doesn't even have any way to, even on a 2 or 3 day delay, to have any information here. So this puts Marty really, out of the frying pan into the fire, so to speak.
Well, and it completely screws them with what they're trying to do with the FBI. I mean, if Omar dies, they have nothing except they've incriminated the shit out of themselves over the last season. So
I mean, they have one option. Marty Bird has to become the legitimate head of the cartel, and then he gets the deal.
And then he gets the deal. I mean, that's the only that's the only option, I guess.
Like, Omar's still alive. He's just going to be in jail for 20 years. I'm just going to run stuff. We'll come back to this in 20 years. I'm sure they'll buy it.
Oh God, Magnum Mills, this show, I'll tell you, that's why we love you, Ozark. And that's why we're doing the Ozark podcast. From there, we are back in Mexico. Marty gets a call from Wendy. She tells him what happened to Omar, and that Omar is currently in a coma, and there's no telling if or when he will wake up. Marty says that he's staying put and he can't show weakness. He tells Wendy that they cannot let anybody know that Navarro is in a coma. They need to find whoever did this and then do what Navarro would do. Camellia walks outside, and Marty tells Wendy that he will call her right back. Magnum Mills, I thought Marty did a great job on the phone here. Again, we don't at first kind of hear Wendy. We hear Marty just being like, Jesus, what does bad mean? And then we hear Wendy say he's in a coma. He lost a lot of blood. And we're like, holy shit. So it's like, okay, he's alive, but in a coma. This was cool how they did this. And, you kind of touched on this a little bit earlier in this episode of the Ozark podcast. Camellia is out there because she knows what that phone call is, right? She has to. Why doesn't Marty see this? I'm worried Marty's being manipulated here by Camellia.
He says on the phone, like, all right, I have to be extra on alert because whoever did this is going to know, like it just went down or whatever. They must know Omar goes out to the yard for his exercise at the same time every day or whatever. And then right when he's saying, oh, we need to find out who did this, the camera basically cuts away to Camellia in the background like a couple of seconds later. To me, that's the show. Again, it could be a red herring. Maybe they're trying to get us to think that, so they're going to go in another direction, or maybe it really was Arturo the whole time or whatever. But for me, I'm just standing by, like, I think, like, man, not only is Camellia like after Marty and Wendy, but there's a reason she asked if he has kids or whatever. Like, I would be very, very, I'm really convinced that she is, moving all the pieces behind the scenes here and working on openly manipulating Marty.
And do you think she wants to control this whole cartel now? She's already lost her whole family. There's nothing left except taking over this cartel.
Well, I mean, it was her brothers and then it was her son, so why not, right? She seems to have as good a claim to it as anybody would.
100%. How cool was it as Marty just gets, like, I mean, legitimate, like, life-changing news potentially, and he just casually tosses the tennis ball to the dog. I just, Small thing, but I liked it.
Well, that was the tennis balls from the title card. So,
Yep. Shout out there. And also, he was trying not to tip his hand. I think too. Maybe, just maybe, Marty is allowing Camellia to think that she is manipulating him, but he's manipulating her. But I don't know that we've seen enough yet to back that up.
yeah, really. I mean, we go through, because now we get to see Marty. He approaches Camellia and then they have the conversation. And he tells her that he got a message from Omar that morning saying not to worry. Marty relays that Omar is strong and he killed the man who tried to kill him. She wants to see Omar, but Marty says that Omar is in lockdown for his own protection. She warns that whoever did this will try again. Marty asks her about Arturo Cabrera, the lieutenant who beat his accountant after the discrepancies were discovered. Camilla says that Arturo and Javi were friends, but Javi never trusted him because Arturo was always jealous of Javi. Marty tells her that he caught Arturo cheating the cartel. Camilla replies that Javi once told her that if Javi became the cartel chief, the first thing he would do is get rid of Arturo.
Total manipulation here by Camellia, bro. I think she is an absolute problem for Marty Bird, and I'm worried that Marty hasn't seen it yet. I'm hoping he does, and we just don't know. And he's so smart that he won't let us know. But are you worried a little bit here for Marty Bird?
I mean, yeah, of course, but it's more just the way the camera operates here, how they keep showing her, like the linger on her when Marty says that Omar's alive, and the actress does a great job here. You can't tell if she's just really kind of neutral or she's trying to mask her emotions or whatever. And then she kind of says to Marty, whoever did this will try again. And I almost think that's like her being like, well, I tried this. Guess what? You're not done, Marty. I'm gonna try again. That's how the whole scene read to me.
Dude, you are spot on, Magnum Mills. And I think that, she planted those seeds to kind of get Arturo to be the scapegoat. What's going to be interesting here is when it happens again, who's the scapegoat now? And
she picked a good one to start because the dude said he was skimming because he was Navarro's best earner. So now she just got Marty to clip Navarro's best earner when their cartel's already not in the greatest situation. Maybe the dude was skimming. On the other hand, this might have been a good time for Marty to keep that information under his hat and then act on it later on when the situation was in a better spot than to do it right here when it's probably just going to set off more chaos.
Yep. And she knows, and this is kind of, you're showing kind of as smart as Marty is and as good as he is at running a business. Running a cartel in Mexico is a completely different endeavor. And I think we're seeing that firsthand here, especially for an American and gringo like Marty. He's just not
doesn't have the emotional intelligence. He's very intelligent, but he's just not great with people. He's good with people as far as relating them to numbers or whatever, but as far as actually like reading people and their emotional states and relating to that, it's just not something. It's just not
playing by this set of the rules. I mean, we're not in a corporate office here where we're following, regulatory guidelines. I mean, this is the wild west.
When you see him kind of reading off the cash flow discrepancies, that is him basically he's in his mind palace pretending he's just in some skyscraper in Chicago.
Yep. And that's how he compartmentalizes all this shit. From there, Magnum Mills, Arturo is taken down to the basement room where Marty himself was once imprisoned and tortured. The henchmen work Arturo over pretty damn good here, but he refuses to admit anything. Marty sits on the stairs and watches as they continue to beat Arturo. I will say, dude, shout out to the crazy Mexican death metal that's playing. Had a nice little ring to it. It was interesting to say the least. Not a track and a needle drop that we typically hear on this show, but it was cool nonetheless.
Yeah, again, not a lot to this scene. I think it's just we're supposed to be like, oh shit, look how it's come full circle. Marty was on the other side of this, this exchange not that long ago. And just my initial thoughts were still when Arturo's down there, like I totally believe that he was skimming, but I really do not believe that he ordered the hit. Nothing about this kind of initial bit of torture here changes that for me.
I agree with you, Magnum Mills. And I think that as we get to a conclusion with this, and we'll talk about it as we roll on here on the Ozark podcast, I think Marty knows at the end of this too, that he's not convinced he ordered the hit. Walk us through the next scene, bro.
After that, we see Nathan meets with Wendy at her office and he gives her flyers to hang up or hand out. The flyers are promoting a bake sale to help raise money to find Ben. Nathan asks her if Jonah's okay and relays what he saw between Jonah and acting sheriff Wyckoff to Wendy. She doesn't know anything about it and she seems upset by the news. Wendy starts asking questions, wondering what he was after. Nathan doesn't know and says that he doesn't care. He's just worried about Jonah. Wendy says that she'll put the flyers up and she'll see him this weekend. As he leaves, Wendy turns the top flyer over so that she won't have to look at Ben's face.
It's one of those things where, we talked about it earlier. I don't know that Wendy sent Ronnie to the Lazy O, and I think this kind of reiterates it a little bit here. Do you think Wendy still feels something with Ben? How do you think she processes this? I mean, clearly when she flips that over, she still has some sort of guilt and remorse here, right? Maybe I'm reading.
I don't think she really has processed it as a thing. I think she's just electing to try not to process anything anymore. She just does that thing where you just keep pushing it down further and further. At some point, we're probably going to get the eruption. When she turns the flyer over, I don't think she does it. It doesn't read as sad to me. It's like either annoyed or just like, she's like, I can't deal with this right now. That's more of how it read than like, she can't look at his face because she's so sad it'll drive her to tears or something like that. Yeah. And even think about, she has, Jonah, who's still alive. And when Nathan tells her the whole thing, when he wants to know what the cops after, and she's asking him, do you know what he was after? And Nathan goes, I don't know. I don't care. He was harassing your son, which I think would be your primary concern. And
which he's right. I mean,
we're already agreeing that Nathan is not the greatest, and the fact that he looks like the one who's kind of morally correct here is says a
really
lot about
sad.
Wendy Bird, I think.
You're not wrong, Magnum Mills. It's very sad. All I know is that if they make it out alive, they better have a whole bunch of cash, because they're going to need some serious intensive therapy that is going to cost hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars. From there, bro, we go back in the basement in Mexico. Marty tells the henchman that Arturo has had enough. He goes outside and he sits on the steps where Father Benitez joins him. Benitez tells him that after similar ordeals, Omar usually called him to hear his confession. Marty declines, stating that he's not Catholic. Father Benitez says that God's love is for everyone, to which Marty replies, is that why you work for the cartel? Marty is skeptical that God can love everybody, and Father Benitez thinks that Marty is unworthy of love without condition. Marty says that nothing comes without conditions. Benitez asks if Marty loves without condition. Marty takes a minute before replying, I'm not sure it's the smartest thing to do. Father Benitez replies that if his love is conditional, then it's also transactional. None of this seems to provide Marty any comfort, and he says goodnight to Father Benitez before he heads back inside. Magnum Mills, we've now gotten to see Father Benitez have the kind of, no pun intended, come to Jesus talk, religious type talk with Wendy, and now with Marty. And they both handled it, while similar, very different. And this just kind of another example of spelling out who Marty is to his core. And I don't know that, I think Marty was 100% honest here. And Father Benitez, one thing that he said that I really liked is he goes where he's needed most. And I thought that was a really powerful line, goes where God is needed most. That's his way of dealing with working for the cartel. And it also backs up Omar's statement in the episode prior when he says there's certain things Benitez won't deliver. And I thought that was kind of cool how they tied that in here a little bit. But man, Marty, I think, was really honest here. And it just speaks volumes about who he is and how he kind of processes things. It's not the smartest thing to do, loving unconditionally. It's hard.
Yeah, you're absolutely right there. And I think this is, again, kind of building upon something Ruth said in that episode 8 here, the first episode of part 2 of season 4, when she said that Marty either doesn't have emotions or he's too construct to act on them, meaning he's too afraid of Wendy, basically, or, he just is unwilling to cross Wendy. And it kind of comes up here a little bit that Marty doesn't really know, right? Like, Father Benitez is asking him some pretty heavy questions, and I don't think Marty either doesn't have the answers, and he's probably never really thought about this too much, right? Like, this is Marty. He just seems to be kind of that dude. He just kind of puts his head down. He does his thing. He goes in, he plays with the numbers. He turns around. Oh shit. All of a sudden the day's over, and he goes home, and he's got the wife and the kids. Yada, yada. All of a sudden it's time to go to bed, get up, do it the next day. That just kind of struck me as who Marty Bird is. I don't think he's had a lot of moments in his life where he's really sat down and reflected like this.
I don't think so. And I think that, the way his life shaped out, he started the business. He was so focused on doing that. They, had the kids. Wendy goes through her kind of postpartum her career and her depression, and then she's cheating on him, and then the cartel thing. I mean, this dude, I'm telling you, bro, they both need family counseling so bad, and I just hope that they get it. Again, the Ozark probably isn't going to end as, rainbows and everything's great, and they're going to come together and get the therapy they need to kind of resolve some of these, not just theological issues, but emotional issues. It's probably not going to happen.
Yeah, dude. The line, nothing comes without conditions, that could basically just be like the thesis statement, the theme of the whole show, more or less. I mean, that's how it worked. You did the cartel thing, but you get this money, but it comes with conditions, and everything from that first episode on seems to come with conditions. And my guess is this is one of those scenes that, this is as far as either of us have watched so far, but my guess is once we've watched the series finale, this is a scene you'll want to come back to, because I get a feeling that it's going to wind up being important in one way, shape, or form for Marty Byrde.
And one last thing that I'll say here before we move on, Magnum Mills, is I respect Marty here for being honest with Father Benitez. It would have been really easy for him to just tell him what he wanted to hear and just move on from it. But he was honest with them. And one thing that really stood out to me is as he was leaving and telling him kind of his harsh, cold truth, he gently puts his hand on Father Benitez's shoulder as he says goodnight and walks away, and just gives him a tiny tap. And I think that was a little bit of an appreciation, and maybe, just maybe, somewhere deep down inside, it felt good for Marty to get a little bit of that off his chest and be honest with him. I don't know. Maybe I'm reading too much into it, but I like that. I like the little shoulder tap.
Yeah, I mean, or Marty Byrde is cursed and he just gave, Father Benitez the touch of death. So let's hope that's not it. But if that's kind of how he feels, right? Though, that Marty's definitely, I don't know if he does feel sorry for himself, but I think he does feel a little bit cursed right now, that there's just not much that he can do in this situation. So despite the fact that he maybe has more power right now than he's ever had in his life, like he could just order, I'll kill that guy. He has actual kind of power, whether it's not his, he can exercise it right now, but he still, I think, feels, pretty powerless.
He does, my man. And from there, we go back in the Ozarks, and we see Ruth get into the U-Haul once again and take off. Before long, she's pulled over by active Sheriff Ronnie and another deputy. They search the U-Haul, but the only contraband they find is Wyatt's bong, which they decline to charge her for. We see that Ruth was a decoy and that Frank Jr. and his men are actually moving the heroin. I kind of thought this one didn't really surprise me. You kind of saw it happen when Ruth went to Frank Jr. and you just kind of, I don't know, it wasn't exactly an M. Night Shyamalan moment where you're wowed, right? I mean, I think we kind of all knew this was going to happen a little bit, something like this, right?
Oh, 100%. It just, the only thing that bothered me is we get to see, we saw that shot in the previous episode where Ruth kind of opens the bar and sees all the heroin stacked up. But here, when you see it in all those duffel bags, it's just so convenient that all this heroin was just sitting there packaged up, ready to go. The cops never found it. It was just there waiting for Ruth. Just from I understand why they needed it to move the plot forward. I just wish they would have done it a little bit more elegantly. That's all.
Yeah, there is no way. And look, we love Ozark and we're not going to be hypercritical here, but we have to be honest with ourselves. There is no way, shape, form, nowhere on planet fucking Earth where there's a massive double homicide, cops are swarming an entire property, that they are not going to literally comb the property and search every fucking, piece of barn, every fixture, every single element of the property is going to be searched when you have a double homicide. There's no way they miss a rickety old barn. This is not exactly like a hidden fucking cavern. It's not the bat, like, you go through and there's a hidden thing. It's not this is a freestanding wooden barn. Christ, you can see through some of the beams because it's so old. I mean, there's no way they're not kicking the door down and searching that. And then there's just piles and piles of prepackaged heroin in there. I hate it. I hate that they didn't do something more creative here. There's no way, shape, and form that that's realistic or believable. And I'm just calling it how I see it, Magnum Mills. Everybody can hate on Jamie G all day long, but I'm calling it how I see it.
It was just way too convenient. Maybe if they had made a bigger effort before they got whacked, we got this big deal. It's due tomorrow. It's all shipped up, But again, that still wouldn't explain the cops. And put it this way, if Sheriff Guerrero was still in charge, she was competent enough, they would have found it. If Ronnie was in charge, he would have found it and found some way to use it for his advantage so it wouldn't still be sitting there. Either way, no matter who was in charge of the sheriff's department at that point, it should have been taken care of.
Yeah, and especially because they knew Darlene was in the heroin business. I mean, it just doesn't
The
make any
only thing I
sense.
would give the show is if somehow they pull they do Shyamalan it up, and we get an episode later where we find out why Sheriff Guerrero had to go back and it has something to do with her finding the heroin, and then somebody reverse knows her to go back and then puts the heroin back or something. I don't know. I think there's a way they could retroactively fix it, but if this just never comes up again and it's just, oh, it was just conveniently there for Ruth when she needed it, then yeah, that was some lazy writing, I think.
100% Magnum Mel. The next scene, we get to see our boy Mel walk us through this one.
And we talked about Mel Zam being a good detective, and he continues to make progress here. We see him arrive at the restaurant where Nelson picked Ben up, and he makes note of a security camera outside in the parking lot. And then we go to Ben's bake sale, where Wendy and Jonah are handing flyers out front, and they're asking people to donate and check out the website. Annalise manages to guilt trip our boy Sam into doubling his purchase. Annalise comments to Charlotte that he seems like a nice man and wonders if he's all alone. Charlotte quickly recaps Sam's story before Wendy rolls up and says that she needs a favor from Charlotte. She needs Charlotte to show up at the fundraiser for the foundation at the casino tonight. Charlotte reluctantly agrees, but asks Wendy to go easy. As the conversation ends, Ruth walks up. Ruth berates Wendy for having this bake sale for Ben, and Wendy tells her that nobody asked her to be there. However, Ruth points at Nathan and tells Wendy he did. Wendy asks what she wants, and Ruth tells her that Wendy's little plan with the sheriff did not work. The Shaw deal is done, and Wendy needs to get the fuck up out of her business.
Woo! Yeah, and that man, oh man, you kind of feel for Charlotte here, but also you see that she's willing to kind of still do what she has to do for the family here a little bit, right?
Yeah, Charlotte again is the one who's probably kind of garnering the most sympathy, because Jonah, again, I feel bad for Jonah, but he kind of jumped in and be like, oh yeah, I'd like to be Marty Jr. Money launderer. Charlotte just kind of feels like, well, everyone else in my family's doing it. I can't really leave by myself. Here I am. I might as well just try to help them not die. I do feel really bad for her. Into the Charlotte breaking down Sam's story is just the best, because you get Annalise and she's still doing her nice little happy plucky thing, and you're like, oh, he seemed like such a nice young man. Is he all alone in the world? And Charlotte goes, well, kind of. His mother got hit by a truck and died, and then he fell in love with a stripper. They were supposed to get married, but apparently he had a bad gambling addiction, so she left him. I don't know what's wrong with him now. And Annalise just goes, aw.
Yeah, this is great. And we get another great one-liner by Ruth here, where she goes, poor fucker doesn't have a clue what he spawned. I mean,
when she talked about Nathan, yeah, because obviously they've met now, so I guess that'd be an interesting scene that we didn't get to see. I guess it probably wasn't that long of an exchange, but like, yeah, you can see Ruth sizing him up, be like, yeah, he looks like Wendy Bird's fucking father.
Good little scene here, Magnum Mills. Anything else before we move on to the next?
Not really. Just again at the end, I think Ruth is just like, she's just extra done with Wendy Bird. So
yeah, you can't get enough.
Yeah, there's no, again, we've already said there's no coming back from this, but this is just, the nails are in the coffin. The coffin has been baked into cement, and the cement has been dropped in the ocean, and they put some chains around it too. She got like the Dracula treatment or whatever. There's no coming back.
No. Do you think, Magnum Mills, that they're setting up a slow build here for the ultimate kind of revenge plot line between Ruth and Wendy? Maybe heading into this back half of this season, we thought it was Ruth in the cartel, but maybe it's really Ruth versus Wendy. I don't know. It's seeming like that a little bit here throughout the first 3 episodes on this back half.
That's what I said earlier. Like, I think it's ultimately it seems like we're going towards an end game where it's going to be somehow Wendy versus Ruth, and whatever side Marty picks is going to be the one that wins. That seems to be, pretty clearly, I think, where that's going for me. I mean, yeah, dude, it's just, yeah, it kind of is what it is, I guess.
Yep. No, appreciate the insight there, brother. We're back in the torture basement in Mexico, and Arturo is getting the same treatment that Marty got with the crazy loud music, bright lights all the time. Marty sends a henchman back down to the room once again. And again, we don't get those typical needle drops, but that was some wild Mexican death metal, I guess. I mean, shit, dude, that's, I don't know. I mean, that's enough to kind of drive you mad a little bit, I guess. 24 hours of that.
I'm trying to remember. I think I think they use more pop stuff in Guantanamo. I feel like I remember hearing they put like Britney Spears and some, because I guess to those guys that would be the worst thing you could hear. I don't know, man. Like you would think that what if he likes Mexican death metal? I mean, it's you'd think they would go with something. I don't know, like Arturo does, like give him like he might not like, I don't know, like some Taylor Swift or some Spice Girls. How about some Spice
Garth
Girls
Brooks or some shit? Yeah.
Yeah, how about some K-pop cover of Spice Girls? There you go. K-pop covers of Spice Girls. That would be torturous, I feel, right?
Yeah, it'd be like putting Ruth down there and be like, all right, you're going to listen to Nas Illmatic, followed by Enter the 36 Chambers, followed by All Eyes on Me,
No,
followed
that's not
by
quite
Ready
that.
to
I'd say it's
Die.
more like, all right, you're going to listen to the Jay-Z and Linkin Park joint.
Yeah.
Here's Method Man and Limp Bizkit.
Yeah.
You know, so like I could see that being, you know, where that's where Arturo is on it. It's not, I guess, although that anything repeated over enough will just become torturous. So if
Absolutely,
that's
bro.
if that's the 15th time he's heard that album today, he's probably done with it, even if it was his favorite album before this all started.
You know what would get me is I'm a Barbie girl living in a Barbie world, followed by the Scat Man, dude. Just those two tracks.
If you're just trying to get shit stuck in my head, you're fucking evil. That's all I'm trying to say.
Magnum Mills knows Jamie G all too well, bro. From there, we see Wendy and Charlotte are preparing for the fundraiser. And then our boy Jim arrives. We found out that Shaw Medical is officially pulling the charitable contributions from the rehab venture. So we canceled the fundraiser to avoid them a very embarrassing situation. He says that they only have one more crack at this. Wendy calls Claire one more time and dispenses with any formalities. She leaves a message explaining that the people she works for are not happy, and Claire should know what that means. She has one last chance to fix this. Bro, Wendy is getting back against the wall, and this is a very dangerous place for anyone to be that is on the opposing side of Wendy with her back up against that wall. I mean, that is very dangerous. She's basically all out threatening Claire here that I'm going to have the cartel fucking murder you unless you do what I say.
But the interesting part here is, all right, say Claire calls her bluff. Wendy has to do something here, and you know she will, but she can't exactly call the cartel down right now. And so she's going to have to do it herself. And I'm trying to think of how would you, she saw Ruth kill Javi. How do you beat that? I guess maybe if Wendy comes in and she kills Connor right in front of her, would that do it? Maybe. I don't know what else Wendy could do to move Claire at this point.
I mean, risk exposing her, maybe blackmailing her. I don't know, but then she's kind of exposing herself. But
I think we're right. I think we're past that working. Wendy wants the foundation, or none of this works. So the blackmail thing would destroy her foundation. So that's just mutually assured destruction.
Yeah, this is a crazy one, dude. And it's good to have Jim back, but how long can Jim kind of hang on here? I mean, he's basically telling her, you cannot get the Schaefers of the world on your board without money. You cannot get money without the Schaefers. Everybody needs to believe that everyone else is tripping over themselves to get in. I mean, classic Bernie Madoff situation here. You have to believe you cannot miss it. So you're doing whatever it takes because everyone else is trying to get it. It's complete pandemonium. She's at a real hard point here where it's like chicken or the egg, but she doesn't have either. And you can't get either without either, but she has neither. And this is, how long can Jim kind of stick around on this sinking ship? Yes, he has an affinity for Wendy Bird, but how long can he kind of, attach his hook to this dying star?
It's kind of crossing your metaphors with fishing and astronomy, but I'll buy it here. Honestly, I said it earlier. I think that Wendy is going to get Jim killed one way or the other. And whether it's intentionally or unintentionally, I think ultimately getting back on board with the Birds, even if it's not 100%, even if he's just got 1 foot in the boat, it's going to cause the downfall of Jim Rattlesdorf. And again, I think Wendy Bird will be, she'll have a feeling about it, or an inkling of a feeling for like 20, 30 whole seconds.
Yeah. And I don't know, is he 100% back on Team Bird here? I don't know. There's been no progress whatsoever. And this was a major swing and a miss. I mean,
right. That's the one thing that doesn't make sense is this was supposed to be the whole. I mean, I guess he got the prospective donors for the fundraiser in the first place, but I don't know how that's progress he made. I don't know why that counts as progress, but again, I think just a little bit sloppy with the writing here. You knew you had to bring Jim back into the fold. It's just, again, not an incredibly elegant or clever way of doing it. It is what it is, kind of. And this did remind me the thing with the fundraiser is it just brings back that, I think it was from season 3, where they're having another thing on the casino, or they're doing some kind of fundraiser. And Ruth says a line where she wonders why rich people have to have so much lavished on them before they even think about reaching in their own pockets. And I think that just, again, it fits with that line about having to have everybody. It's all about creating this kind of artificial demand here, that these people only want to do it because they see all the other people that are in their class or their social stature are doing it.
Yeah, that was season 3 with Ruth, in her heyday with Ben there. Magnum Mills, walk us through the final scene of this episode, and a lot happens here, bro. Walk us through it.
And in the final scene of the episode, we're back down in the torture basement, and waterboarding has been added to the menu. Thankfully, they did not find a way to put a urinal down there, so it's just regular non-urinal waterboarding, which is, I guess, slightly better. I'm not really sure. Just head in the urinal, not great. And Arturo finally admits under pressure that he'd been fucking with the books, but says that at Omar's best earner, he deserved it. He continues to deny ordering any assassination attempt, and Marty tells the guys to go again. Arturo finally says he did it. He ordered the hit. Marty goes back upstairs and calls Wendy. She asks if he's okay and what he's going to do. He says, "What else can I do?" and hangs up the phone. And Marty tries to gather himself for what comes next. Nelson comes in and tells him that he doesn't need to stay. Marty replies, "Yes, I do." He then shares a long look with Father Benitez and watches as Nelson shoots Arturo in the head.
Yeah, I mean, this scene was, I mean, let's just be honest, it was tough to watch here. I don't know, man. I mean, it just felt like Arturo just basically admitted it because he had no choice and didn't want to get tortured anymore. And you got to think that, as smart as Marty is, he's got to pick up on that a little bit, right? I mean, no doubt he was skimming money, but I don't know. I don't believe that he ordered this hit, bro.
Yeah, from step one, I've never really bought it. My initial instinct, I feel I'm sticking with here. He definitely was skimming. I believe that, but again, this goes to show that information garnered under torture is generally not reliable, because people will say anything to get the torture to stop because it's, torturous. I think what Marty really does screw up here is not only that, I think he just went about this situation wrong. He talked about having to be Omar, and I can't see Omar taking a guy, especially not only is he, now you're talking about him, he tried to get the head of the cartel killed. Not only was he stealing, he also tried to have him killed. This is not something where you just send your henchman down in the basement to shoot him in the head by himself. This is where you make a big show, you line him up in front of all your lieutenants, in front of everybody, and you kill him yourself, right?
Yep.
I mean, that's really what, and I think deep down, Marty knows that. It was hard enough for him just to give the go ahead to this, but I think part of that is too because he realizes this deep down, that it's not even, it's Arturo didn't even do it. I think he wants it to be over so desperately, so he's just trying to force himself to believe that this is the right move. And again, Mike Ehrmantraut would totally call this a half measure.
Definitely a half measure, and you never doubt the Ehrmantraut. Shout out Saul over soon. The podcast covering Better Call Saul. Your guys, Jamie G, Magnum Mills, are doing that one too. Make sure you follow that bad boy because that show is crazy awesome. But back to the Ozark and the Ozark podcast. Magnum Mills, this was a really messy death, to your point. Dude, anything with that look with Father Benitez, do you see Marty maybe breaking down a little bit and welcoming Father Benitez in? I think if anyone's going to do it between Marty and Wendy, it might be Marty, but there was definitely something to that long stare.
Well, I just thought it was, again, a reflection of what Father Benitez said about how Omar used to come confess to him after he had nights like that. I think that's him kind of saying to Marty, like, I know what you're about to do, but I will be here if you want to talk to me about it afterwards. That's kind of how I read it.
Yeah. And I also kind of, one thing that I wanted to point out here too is Marty, I mean, this wedge between Marty and Wendy just grows even bigger. Didn't it feel like Marty just, like, he, in his mind, he's like, I have to now deal with this thing, this horrible fucking thing of having somebody tortured and then killed because Wendy made me do it. Like, deep down, there's so much resentment there, right? I mean, they
both know that Wendy would be better suited to this than Marty is. Like, this is Wendy's already had to, order the code red, so to speak.
Yeah.
Now she's making Marty cross that line. I think he's a little bit resentful of it.
Yeah.
Just in the tiny bit.
Just a smidge. Magnum Mills. That's basically the episode.
Oh, one more before we got out of there. I just couldn't help it when they were in the basement and Marty keeps trying to tell him, like, you got to say it. You got to say it. For some reason, the whole thing just reminded me so much of the courtroom scene from a Few Good Men, where Tom Cruise is trying to get Jack Nicholson to say he ordered the code red. And I half expected for when Arturo said like he did, he's like, I ordered the code red or something like that. Or you
can't handle it.
I don't know why, but I almost laughed a little bit because I was just getting flashbacks of that for some reason. So a little bit of a lighter note to cut a pretty dark scene there. It's someone do a little mashup or a super cut of that. I'd like it.
Magnum Mills, that is the episode. Before we hand out our hardware, let's take a look back at the symbols from this opening title card. No, they're not the kick-ass symbols on our Ozark Podcast official merch, which these are fucking badass, and you can analyze these all you want. They're from the opening title card. What were they again, Magnum Mills?
And these are actually pretty easy to break down. First, we saw 2 tennis balls, and we see Marty throw the tennis ball here when he's outside on the phone. A lantern, which we see is Buddy's lantern there that Wendy knocks over at the end of the episode. We see the Mexican flag on a flagpole. Marty's in Mexico, pretty self-explanatory. And we see a winding staircase, which is that circular staircase that we see Marty sitting on at one point in the episode. So pretty straightforward stuff there. That brings us to our favorite quote or dialogue exchange from the episode. I'll go first here. I'm not going to lie. I wanted to use the Ruth Candyland line because it's just so good. But I felt like it was a little bit of a cop-out just to go with another Ruth line. So I'm going to shout out honorable mention here. I just got to say, Charlotte describing Sam Dermody's life story in like 3 sentences was super entertaining. But I did want to go with something that was both entertaining and a little bit more thematically serious. So I went with the exchange between Frank Jr. and Ruth, where Frank says, and you want me to help fuck back? And Ruth says, well, what's so fucking funny about it? And Frank Jr. says, I just never had you pegged as a Darlene Snell wannabe. You always seem more like a Junior Marty Bird type. And Ruth says, fuck you. I ain't either of them. And I think that's going to be something going forward that she's going to be determined to prove that she isn't either of them. Jamie,
Love it.
What was your favorite piece of dialogue here?
Yeah, good call on that, bro. I have got to go with that classic Ruth one-liner where she busts into the sheriff's office like a bat out of hell. God damn it, Ronnie, you going down interrogating my employees. I mean, and when she basically says, what I'm telling you is Wendy's playing chess and you're playing fucking Candyland. Great line, dude. I have to use it. I am going to use it every week. Every time we do an Ozark podcast, I am getting a Ruthism that I have to incorporate into my life, right? The last, episode or 2, it was cunt struck. Now it's I'm playing chess. You're playing fucking Candyland. That is bad ass shit. Got to use it. Love it. Definitely my favorite quote of the episode. Now it's time for us to choose our favorite moment or scene. I will go first here, Magnum Mills. I am going to have to choose that scene between Marty and Father Benitez as he sits outside. I just thought it was really powerful, and a super tell is kind of where Marty is in his thought process. And I like that we got Wendy's one-on-one with Father Benitez, and now we got Marty's. And I just, ultimately, man, I think that scene kind of, in a way, basically symbolizes the entire kind of storyline of this show, like the overarching theme. Nothing comes without conditions. And yeah, I just, it was a big moment for me. Really enjoyed it. And I thought it was one of the more powerful moments of this episode.
I have to fully agree with you there. I am 100% convinced that when we look back on, this series, this season, this final group of episodes, this will be the scene that sticks out as the most important one for this episode. I have to go with that one. Like you said, there's just a ton to unpack there. So that's pretty much it. I'm not going to rehash what you said. Good call. And I think that pretty much obviously is just both the best and the most important scene of the episode. And that brings us to something a little bit lighter.
Hey, my buddy!
This is where we give our MVP of the episode. Shout out, Buddy. I believe it's my turn to go first here. And boy, this was a tough one, man. This was an episode without any clear winners. So I'm going all the way out on the ledge, and I'm just pretending that I am right with my theory. So my MVP is going to Camilla, because I think she won this episode. I think she's setting Marty up. I think she got everything she wanted except for Omar dying. If Omar would have died, great, but he didn't. So what? Now she just starts moving on Marty. She gets him to take out Arturo. Then she's going to start building distrust and discord from within. And eventually she is going to wind up being a major problem for the Birds. So despite the fact that she lost her son and she, tried to kill her brother, my MVP is Camellia Alessandro. I think she is going to be kind of the secret cartel villain here for these final episodes. Jamie G, who's your buddy here?
Yo, I love it, Magnum Mills. Good call on that, bro. I really thought about going with Sheriff Wyckoff just because I really enjoyed his lines here, and I think he aims to be Sheriff Permanent. I have decided to move my stance on my buddy, and I am gonna be forced to take. It breaks me, but I'm gonna be forced to take Wendy Bird. Now, hear me out on this, okay? Wendy is refusing to give up. She's trying every single thing. She did manage to get Jim, which is a critical component of her success, back in the fold. She thought she had an answer with the fundraiser. That backfired, but I do think she gets that figured out, and I think she wins in this battle versus Shaw, and I think she's positioned to do so. She may have to literally kill somebody with her own hands, but I think she's positioned there. I also think that she's got, even though she's risking any minor thread of love or anything that might be left in her marriage, she's got Marty doing what she needs Marty to do to kind of get that positioning right. And I still think she's in a position to kind of win, despite everything falling around behind her and her literally, I mean, she's a lot like, shout out PBP, Peaky Blinders podcast, where we talk about our boy, Tommy Shelby. She's a lot like Tommy Shelby in that she has no limitations, but by having no limitations, she's got nobody that loves her. She doesn't have her family anymore. She doesn't have her husband anymore. She doesn't have kids hate her, but by golly, she's going to get what she wants. I got to give it to Wendy Bird. As terrifying as she is, she's still in a position to kind of win this thing, even though I have a feeling that probably nobody's going to win at the end of it, but I got to give it to Wendy Bird. That brings us to, it's the final countdown. No, not the hit song, the literal final countdown. We're going to grade this episode on a scale of 0 to 100% clean. So fresh and so clean. How clean is the proverbial money for you, for You're the Boss, Magnum Mills? I'm up first here. I will do this. Dude, this one is going to fall really similar to where I was last episode. I think I gave last episode an 87. I am giving this an 85% clean rating. I thought it was really good. I like what they did. Not a ton. I think the first two episodes were just so like packed with shit. This one felt a little light, where maybe we're kind of entering that, like, okay, starts off with a real serious banger, slows down a little bit, and then as we tail off to the end of this thing, it's going to get way back piping hot again. Feels like we're kind of taking that little bit of just calm down just a little bit here. Good episode. Nothing really bad about it other than I hate the storyline with the heroine, with Ruth. A lot of chess piece kind of movement stuff. No major thing, although we did see Omar go into a coma, which is a pretty damn major thing. But I'm sticking at 85% clean. Still very good, enough to pass and be proud of when you come home. How clean is your money, Magnum Mills?
Yeah, so far this is the one I've really enjoyed or liked the least. And again, that's not that I dislike it. I'm going to go 80% clean. There are just a couple of, this is where you get into, there's just a couple of, writing shortcuts that I'm not willing to overlook here. They bother me a bit. And I also think now you're dealing with the fallout of it works so well having Ruth take out Javi in that first episode here. But now the problem is you have to deal with all the fallout, which means having to reorient a lot of these characters. So like you said, that's a lot of what's going on here is they're taking the chess pieces, they're moving them around the board to get them into position for the home stretch here for these final 4 episodes. So I get what they're doing. There's nothing really about the episode, like I said, other than a few the writing shortcuts that didn't make sense that I didn't like. It's a perfectly fine episode. But again, I think other than that big speech between Father Benitez and Marty, I don't think there's going to be a lot here that you're going to revisit from it. So I think that basically wraps up the grades here, and not much left to do except, I know a lot of people, they probably sat down, they killed themselves watching all 7 of these in a row. Shout out to the people who did that, man. These are some shows this isn't like binging The Office. If you managed to do all 7 episodes of Ozark here in one sitting, good for you. But we're not doing that. We have actually not seen past this episode at this point, so we're just going to make a couple of predictions here. I'll go with one I already touched on here, in that some way, shape, or form, you're going to see what Ben told Nelson get back to Wendy. Whether or not Nelson tells Wendy himself at a crucial moment, or he tells it to Marty or something like that. Maybe they're having a little bit of a heart-to-heart down there in Mexico, and then Marty chooses to use that information against Wendy at some point. I just think in some way, shape, or form, Ben's confession there is going to come back around. Otherwise, kind of why show it other than to make us even more sad? Or, I guess it makes sense because to show Mel Satins onto him, but they didn't have to do that. I want them to think it has a little bit more of a meaning, that they didn't show it just to emotionally manipulate us.
Yeah, no, I like that, Magnum Mills. I think so too, bro. And this was something that kind of bothered us, that like a 1-season character had such sway in the show. And it just goes to show you that it's gonna, the Ben storyline thing is gonna ride all the way to the end here, one way or the other. And I'm with you on that one. I got to go back to this attempt on Omar's life. I am with you 100%. I think it's Camellia behind it, and if it's not her, I 1000% think it's not Arturo. So it would be another curveball. Just makes way too much sense for it to be to Camellia. And I think maybe we find out a little bit more about that as we head into the next episode or two.
And, I had talked about already that I think, Jim is going to die because of his association with the birds. I do think it's possible that maybe what would be kind of crazy is maybe Maya Miller or someone at the FBI tries to flip him, and then Wendy has to kill Jim. Maybe that's why she actually feels bad about it for 20-30 seconds. I don't know. For some way, I think it feels more and more like, if I can call that, Wendy Bird's going to actually physically kill somebody before the end of this. How about that?
I like it. Bro, I'm gonna go to our favorite gum chewing to private dick, and that's Mel. I think he somehow, some way, he gets the camera footage off that restaurant. They did a real good job as he was walking up to the restaurant where Ben left, with Nelson taking a peek up and seeing the camera pointing directly where Nelson's SUV would have been parked. I think he gets that footage, figures it out, tries to get Nelson tracked down, or at least figure out who he is, and makes a connection that the cartel's involved here, and all hell breaks loose.
I am right with you on that. I think that's exactly where they're going. And I maybe Claire talked about maybe Wendy goes over there and whacks Connor in front of her, or something, tries to bring her over. What if Claire, like, she gets this message from Wendy threatening her, and what if she's like, oh shit, and she's like, all right, she tells Connor, go whack Wendy Bird. What if she decides to, like, instead of, she's been pretty passive here, and she's like, all right, enough of this. I'm not sitting around waiting for someone to kill me. And she actually makes a preemptive move against the birds. I could see something like that happening.
That would be really interesting. I mean, that's another kind of quiet villain character here that could emerge in Claire. Like where they're going with that. A lot of irons in the fire here, broski. I'm gonna just go ahead and say Ronnie, Wyckoff. He does in fact become sheriff permanent, and he wins the sheriff election with
I'm with
the
that.
help of the birds.
Yeah, I'm with that. And let's go one more kind of dark one here. And I think Father Benitez is gonna die. No. And I think it's going to be at the hands of Omar. So let's say Omar wakes up by the end of next episode. Somehow the plan's going to work. He's going to get down there in Mexico, and Wendy is going to rat out that Father Benitez wanted Omar to stay in jail, and Omar is going to kill Father Benitez. And at that point, Marty is also going to be like, kind of, that's his friend now. That's his boy. And then when Marty finds out that Wendy did that and got Father Benitez killed, it's just going to be another wedge between Marty and Wendy.
Wow. So maybe that look at the end brings them a little bit closer, and then Wendy rats him out, and man, oh man, that's going to be an intense scene, having Omar kill Father Benitez, no doubt about it. So I guess that means you're saying Omar wakes up from his coma. Are you placing that in the next episode, Magnum?
Yeah, and if not by the end of the next episode, soon thereafter. And that's the one thing I'll say here, is that they might have to be moving some pieces around, but the show isn't really spinning its wheels too much. They're pretty good about that. So I don't think they're going to do the thing where let's keep, Omar in the coma until the series finale. I don't see that happening.
Yeah, it's not going to be. We won't spoil any other shows, but we've covered some shows recently where folks have done that. Check out all of our shit. Any other predictions, Magnum Mills, or are you ready to get out of here, brother?
I think that's about, I will just say, I think we see Sheriff Guerrero again. I'm not sure why. Maybe, I'm assuming she actually is back in Polk County or whatever, like she's not secretly dead or something. That would be a little bit too much to kind of hand wave away or whatever, but it would just be really weird, right? If they spent this time establishing the character, and now with like 4 episodes left, they're going to be like, oh yeah, it's like what, you're putting Poochie on the rocket and Poochie goes back to his home planet or whatever, to paraphrase The Simpsons. It would be really weird if she's never seen again. So I think we have to see Sheriff Guerrero again and find out why she's not in Ozark anymore. Maybe it's related to something that happens in the future or something that happened off screen already that we didn't see.
Thank you again for checking out the Ozark podcast. Keep it right here for our next episode, which will be covering season 4, episode 11, Pound of Flesh and Still Kicking. Please remember to like, subscribe, and comment. It really helps us out a lot. We love it when you do it. Mills, tell everybody where they can find the rest of our always free, totally chill content.
Yeah, boy, that's they got some real positive sounding episode title names. So I'm sure Pound of Flesh and Still Kicking is going to be a very boring story about how Charlotte copes with her desire to leave and go to college or something. So let's shout out Jonah trying to get a date for the prom. I'm sure that's what that's about. Anyways, thank you for checking out the Ozark podcast. You can find us on your favorite podcast platform, on social media at Ozark Podcast. Feel free to send feedback to OzarkPodcast@gmail.com. We're from the JoeBlowFootballShow.com, who you can find at JoeBlowFootballShow.com, and on social media at Joe Blow Show. We're right now covering the 6th and final season of Better Call Saul on our podcast, Saul Over Soon. Find on your favorite podcast platform and social media at Saul Over Soon. We just got done covering the 6th and final season of Peaky Blinders on PBP, a Peaky Blinders podcast on your favorite podcast platform and on social media at Peaky Podcast. We are also covering the 3rd season of Barry, the hit HBO show. We're the Barry Podcast on your favorite podcast platform and Barry Podcast on social media. And, just to bring it back, we can't stop. We won't stop covering It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia on the Night Pod Cometh on your favorite podcast platform and on social media at Night Pod Cometh. Thanks again for checking us out. I'm Magnum Mills. He's Jamie G. And this has been the Ozark Podcast presented by the Joe Blow Football Show. We'll see you next time. Until then, all you got to do is remember 2 things. First, dirty money ain't worth a damn thing.
And the bird. Bird is the word. We'll see you next time right here on the Ozark Podcast.
It's like the nicest thing we do for the birds because everything else for Ruth. You get this one song, bird, so that's what you get.
And we do say the birdhouse, which is kind of cool. This has been the Ozark Podcast, presented by the Joe Blow Football Show. We are not in any way, shape, or form affiliated with Ozark, MRC, Aggregate Films, or Netflix. This show is for entertainment purposes only. Any views or opinions expressed here are personal and do not represent those of people, institutions, or organizations who may or may not be associated with the Joe Blow Football Show. If you have any questions, please contact us at OzarkPodcast@gmail.com. That's OzarkPodcast@gmail.com. Thank you for listening. Please remember to like, subscribe, and comment.